Yeah, you would be the 13th interview that we've done.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So still fairly new. We're still in the beginning of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been having a lot of fun. It's been really cool to talk about art with people from many disciplines. Like one guy I had, he was a photographer, Paul Siebert, who uh, took a airplane or sorry a helicopter with no doors in New York
Wow.
to get photos like
Wow.
this. Yeah,
Holy.
in like
Oh,
November.
oh. I'm
Yeah.
actually like just getting like very recently I've just been getting into photography myself, and like seeing all these photographers' works is just insane to me. Like the dedication that like all these photographers put into, into all their shots, it's like crazy to me.
Yeah, it's insane
Cause
what they can come up with. I don't know,
yeah.
I don't know how Paul made this happen. Because like November is
Mm-hmm.
a very cold time in New York, and you're also surrounded
Oh
by water,
yeah.
so that adds to the
Uh-huh.
cold and all the winds and everything in a helicopter with no
Yeah.
doors. Like that takes bravery, in my opinion. I don't know if I could do
It-
that.
yeah. Like the planning for the shoot, the composition planning, the lighting planning. It's like that guy has like put a lot of thought into that shoot, like I have all my kudos to like the crazy photographers out there. I'm like trying my best to become more and more like them these days.
Yeah, like there's no redos. So when you
Mm-hmm.
do it is when you do it.
Yeah,
Right? Like all that planning for
exactly.
months and months and
Yep.
months. It's a lot
Uh-huh.
of work. But
Mm-hmm.
in any case, so we're live. Thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you for taking
Hello.
time out of your day, Soba.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
No, it's a pleasure. I stumbled
So
upon your work on the timeline, and one of the things that struck me about it was how well you were managing sorry, how well you were managing to create a world in your
mm-hmm.
paintings. A lot of them are about like these fantasy landscapes.
Thank you so much.
Is this a style that you've always kind of gravitated towards, or is it just something new that you're trying out?
I suppose it's a style that I have always gravitated towards. So back when, again in 2021, back when I was getting serious in my art, I was like, I wanted to like do art that pleases me, and not like just to fit like the social media. So I was like, what am I always gravitated towards, my whole life? And it has always been nature, it has always been fantasy. Because whenever I walk through woodlands, or forestry, slightly forested areas, in my head I can kind of like imagine some sort of like fairy tale stories going through it, growing up, and I just wanted to tell that kind of story in my art. And back when I first started, I didn't know if like that kind of thing would resonate with people at all. But I just kept at it, and eventually, I guess I found my audience, and I'm very happy that there are people who found my artworks. Who also appreciates like storytelling inside nature. Like my affinity towards like the details in natures. To the point where I'm willing to render every single foliage I can see. Like it's a very humbling experience finding people who appreciate my art, like exactly the way I envision it.
Yeah, because I can't imagine how many layers a piece like this must have taken. I mean, like each individual stroke of grass and the line and brush stroke. This looks like it would take an immense
Mm-hmm.
amount of time.
Actually, this was done in a software called Heavy Paint on iPad, and this software is very limited in its layer, because it takes up a lot of RAM.
Hmm.
So I think something like this will take me about 10 layers at most. And most, like I have to use like a pretty traditional painting techniques, like how I will paint with watercolors and gouache IRL, as in like painting with one layer for most of the part, to work with the layers limitation, with something like heavy paint. But if you're talking about my other pieces with which were done in softwares like Procreate, which allows more layers, then yes, I use quite a lot of quite a lot of layers in those paintings.
Yeah, so it'd be something like this, I'm guessing.
Those are also heavy paints actually. I think this one was, also 8 or 9 layers at most. Because like anything more than that, the software will unfortunately crash, sadly.
That sounds sounds about right. Um,
Yeah.
is that where you started, like just drawing and sketching on an iPad digitally, or like any kid, I'm guessing, just you picked up paint at some point and painted with your fingers, and then it just took off from there.
Oh, so my background actually is, of course, as a kid, I started as a traditional artist. Back then I started playing with paints, I started playing with like watercolors mostly. And then, when I was a teenager, my parents got me my first ever digital tablet. I think that was when I was 16 years old, actually. And that's when I started probably learning digital art. At first, I was a PC artist, along my teenage years. And then when I was in college, I got my first iPad Pro, and that's when I started becoming a full time iPad artist because it's a lot more portable, I feel like, and drawing on a screen tablet is so much more convenient than like the regular slab slab of plastic tablet that you use for PCs. At least
Oh,
that
you
was
find
the
this
one that
better?
I had back then. I actually prefer iPad to these days just because I've been so used to it at this point.
Is it just something about being able to see like the direct impact instead of having to like look up at the screen and hope that your hand movement matches what's on the screen, or?
Yep, pretty much. And also the color accuracy on iPad is awesome. Like it's freaking awesome compared to any PC monitor that I've had so far. And also the Procreate brush engine is really good, At least it matches my art style really well. So after a few years where I got very used to iPad art, I was like there. I wanted to get back to PC art, but I was like, I don't really see any reason to get back, So I've just been keeping at it.
I see. I see. Okay. And in terms of the digital art medium, is it just because like how easy it is to redo and to make mistakes and Control Z and just wipe it away, like
Oh
that's why
yeah.
you've stuck with it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Especially for the sketching part. When I was a full-time traditional artist, I find that I have never been able to like be confident in my lines. I know like a lot of like artists and like art resources out there tell you to like, oh, practice your lines, be confident in your lines. But I've tried that so hard, and like no matter how much I try, I need to erase so many times to like get everything right, get like every single one of my ideas in place. So, I end up with like torn papers, like messy
Mm-hmm.
sketchbooks,
Mm-hmm.
and it made me pretty sad at the time. But ever since I switched to digital art, I didn't have to worry about that anymore. So yeah, that's like one of the reasons why I'm sticking with digital art so far.
Gotcha, gotcha. And did you have any like formal art training as a kid? Like, did you ever go to like an art school or take a program of any sorts?
I did go to an art college after I graduated high school, which was a 3 years degree. But as a kid, I didn't have any art training prior to that. I was just a kid with a pencil mostly.
Gotcha. And what was that? What was that college like? I've heard different experiences from people that go to art school, and so far most of the impression that I'm getting is not all that positive.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely grueling. Absolutely grueling. It's like pretty extreme. I think my take on art school is that most of the resources that you get in art school, you can kind of find it online nowadays, and like if you're good enough, you can probably even find like a free online resource for it. And the point of art school is in order to get your reps in, because like all these professors are there to like make sure you really practice it in. like maybe if you're a self-taught learner, if there is no one to like push you on like a deadline for a certain homework, you might not get your reps in.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I think art school is also a lot about the connection. So as soon as you graduate, you might be able to work immediately in the industry, which was not the case for me. Unfortunately, I didn't immediately get like an industry job, but I did settle as a full-time freelancer. So I guess that's pretty good as well.
I see. Okay, and so the networking that would be the other plus of it. And I'm guessing you went
Mm-hmm.
to the school at home in Indonesia or
Oh, I went to school in Malaysia actually. There's like a
Malaysia.
handful of. Yeah. Indonesia doesn't really have like reliable art schools. Back in my back when I graduated high school, but recently there have been like new like art classes popping up here and there in our capital. So that's awesome. I'm very happy for the new artists who are based in Indonesia as well.
Okay, and is there still like an emphasis on more traditional art in that part of the world, or are people fully embracing the digital landscape as like the new wave?
Oh no, yeah. Especially the younger people, they're fully embracing the digital art nowadays. No question about it. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm guessing like that you would still get the same kind of response from parents and friends when you want to tell them that you you want to be an artist, or is it a little bit different there? Because here it's like, okay, well, I mean, good luck. It's very difficult. You're gonna have a lot of struggle, but we have this thing. It's called the starving artist, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's
Is it
very fair. I mean, back then, yes, when I was in like middle school, high school, yes, people say that all the time. But like in the recent years, ever since, like maybe since 2021, 2022, ever since I tell people, oh, I'm a full-time digital artist, like no questions asked. They're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. What kind of art do you make? And like, I make art for private commissioners, sometimes for book covers, sometimes for games, and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. No questions asked. So sometimes that does still surprise me in a positive way, not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm very happy that even the mainstream people are getting more and more knowledgeable about art these days. I think that's pretty awesome.
That's great to hear. And is
Mm-hmm.
there because usually like at least here in North America, there'll be like conventions where artists can go, whether it's like game conventions or anime conventions, and
Oh
they
yeah.
can set up a booth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have the same structure there, where it's besides the galleries, there's still quite a few spaces for artists to go and display their work?
Oh yeah, there are art cons, every now and then in Indonesia. But preferably, like my own personal take is that it's not my favorite place to table at, just because the currency here is honestly pretty low, and like the amount that I make back will be barely enough to break even with the cost that I need to produce my merch. So if I were able to table again in the future, I would prefer to table in like a neighboring country such as Singapore or Malaysia. But Indonesia does have anime conventions.
I see. And have you been to any like large convention that's like within these countries that you mentioned, to like Singapore or anything? Have you shown your work in any of those places yet?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did. I just tabled like once actually in a very long time, which just happened in May. That was in Singapore actually, and the last time before that I ever conned was back in Malaysia back in 2019, I think, which is like a very long time ago. Other than that, I haven't really tabled again.
Okay. I'm guessing you got some stuff in the future, especially for the summer.
Yeah, I'm working towards it. Right now, I'm focusing on finishing some of my commission slots and also like other freelance works. But like once all of those are done, I want to focus more on creating merches. I like sometimes, like all the time, I do think of about like making my art into something I can physically touch. Like trinkets, um, keychains, prints, stuff like that. And like my dream is like to print out my own tarot card one day. Hopefully I can get that project done pretty soon. And I do enjoy like illustrating, but also like the the satisfaction I get from from having like a physical copy of my art is like it's pretty good. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like just like the tarot card series that you did earlier
Mm-hmm.
here that I saw. It's an interesting take on it because it's inspired by Bloodborne. I think that's the game.
Yeah. Uh huh. Yep. That was the game Bloodborne. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
having something physical like that would certainly it just gives it like an extra dimension like that.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, I was so inspired by Bloodborne. I was like inspired by the Eldritch themes, like the way the game has like such a rich storytelling without even like putting all of it in dialogue. Like all like most of the storytelling was done through environment storytelling, like through the objects, through the characters' designs, and I thought that it was like the coolest thing ever back then. It still is right now, and I just wanted to pay tribute to it, and I actually hand printed all of those tarot cards myself. it was like it was like two pieces of cardstocks glued together, and I had to like gold foil it myself. I had to glue the two cardstocks together myself. Trim it down myself. It was so much work, but also it was fun. Like the production of those tarot cards, and it last for 3 years. I opened like three batches for it. But after that, I was like, I'm not physically strong enough for this anymore. It has been
Hmm.
fun, but I needed my break.
Yeah, it does look like it would take a lot of effort to make sure that the print is right, to align everything, and to
Oh
manually go
yeah.
each over every single one of them, and then work with gold foil,
Mm-hmm.
which I would imagine is a little frustrating just because of how flimsy it could be.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It was like it took like so many, like a couple runs for each deck of cards to make sure that the gold foil sticks perfectly. But I was like I was like pretty much a perfectionist. I was like, I'm not gonna like stop gold foiling this one single batch of cards, just because like there's one spot that wasn't covered, so I kept going on it again and again. Oh yeah, those were good times.
Do you think you'll ever like make another series of tarot cards, like of actual like a deck of cards?
I will, yeah. I'm currently working on one right now. It's like on my more recent posts. I'm starting from like the suit of wands right now, and like so for the Bloodborne cards, I only did the major arcana, which is like only 21 cards and 22 actually. And for like my own original art of tarot cards, I'm going to like make the full deck, the full 78 deck of cards. So let's see how that goes, and and oh man, I'm pretty scared thinking about like how long that's even gonna take.
Okay, and I see these physical little trinkets here. That's I guess what you meant by making your art into something that you can hold. Like this is a new release of
Oh
yours.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I did sell this in the Singaporean con I mentioned earlier. And they actually did really well. They entirely sold out. So I was really happy about that because I was so excited about how this turns out. But at first I was like, man, does anyone in an anime con even want to get, nature themed keychains, because I was pretty much making this for myself, it was like for my own visions. But thankfully, a lot of people were into it. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah, they look really cool. I especially like the this piece right here where it's essentially
Thank you
slices
so much.
of rock that's
Mhm.
layered over each other.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Interesting.
Thank you
Do you
so.
know if you would ever like to make any other kind of like physical objects, or is it just like keychains and prints for now?
Okay, number one is definitely tarot cards. Number two is probably some crochet items, maybe like scrunchy stuffs like that. Something that I can like fashion to look like details in nature again, because I really like those kind of things for some reason. um, I guess I have some ideas about like some crocheted moss pattern that I might turn into pouches or something. That's something that I'm interested in developing in the near future.
would you ever consider like having like a 3D printed piece?
Ooh, hmm. That will be extremely cool, but I guess I will have to learn 3D modeling first in order to, to really do that. I will, that will be really cool though if I can pull that off one day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge community for it, and there's actually a lot of free assets that people throw up on the web a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. So chances are you might not even have to make your own model. It's probably already made by someone else. But yeah, in terms of the
That's
physical
fair.
space, 3D printing is it's really fun to play with.
True, that is very true. I guess like right, that will be something cool, but I guess right now I just don't have any visions right now about what I might make with 3D printing. So
No, fair
maybe
enough.
I'm gonna put that in the back burner and maybe develop it in the near future.
Yeah, no, fair enough. They're a little frustrating to work with at
Mm-hmm.
times, but if you're able to have your vision like actually come to life in front of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's very satisfying. I have one myself that I use on occasion, but it needs a lot of like
Ooh,
tweaking and a lot of background work. But when it does work, it comes out really well.
I see. Yeah, from time to time I see like, these content creators who have like their own 3D printers on Instagram or on Twitter. And they make like their own cup holders, they make like their own figures. It's
Hmm.
so cool. I really wish I could make something like that one day.
Yeah, and they're super cheap. They take all sorts of materials, and there's different types of
That is
printers. There's
true.
resin printers and whatnot. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't think it's like gotten as popular as as it's gonna get, but it's certainly gotten a lot cheaper. So I think it's only a matter of time before it starts making its waves into the art world again.
That is true. Every time I visit conventions these days, there are more and more 3D printer creators actually. Like they sell 3D printed trinkets, like tray holders,
Hmm.
keychains. It's actually so creative. Like I'm always amazed by how creative people are every time I visit those places. They are really inspiring as well. And I'm like, maybe one day I'm gonna make something like that.
Yeah, well, here's hoping. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
one thing I've noticed, just as a common theme, there's a lot of games that you reference in your pieces. Is that something that like you just kind of adopted as an adult? Is like you just started playing them, or you've always like gamed as a kid and it's just a source of inspiration for you?
Um, Actually, I just started gaming as an adult because as a kid, I wasn't allowed to touch any video games, because my parents were like, you need to focus on your studies. So, as an adult with adult money, I can afford as many games as I want.
Hmm,
And
right.
they were like really, really inspiring to me, especially games with sceneries, how surprising, like Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the
Hmm.
Wild, like those games sucked up so many of my hours. And even like most of my gameplay was like not even completing the game. It was like just like walking around the map, appreciating the environment, exploring new places. Those are my favorite part about the game.
I see. Okay, so it was just more just like a just for the visuals. That's what you played for.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, because I grew up on gaming, but I can't really say that. There's only a handful that stand out that were just visually appealing or visually
Mm-hmm.
striking. But I only ask just because there's actually I've interviewed at least two artists in the past who have done um, works that are based on gaming. One of them who actually paints his pieces in gouache first, and then
Oh,
takes a photo of them. So yeah, his name is Riker Woodward. So
oh man,
he
this is really cool.
yeah,
This
it's
is really
like
cool.
it's a very like simple subject, but he is like a
Mm-hmm.
classically trained artist who went to school for it.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes all those skills that he learned and puts it into this.
Oh yeah, the stylization is so good here. Like it kind of like somehow it kind of makes it look like those old graphics. Like I really, really like this. It's like simple but also really effective. So cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's this one piece that he did for Mario N64. Oh yeah, this one right here.
Oh, oh man, I love this. So cool.
Yeah, from what he told me,
That's so cool.
he was working on his in his final year, and his professors, they just kept
Uh-huh.
pressuring him to do these abstract paintings, and he was just so fed up having to fit that kind of mold that he's like, man, you know what? I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna take all the skills that I learned, and I'm gonna apply it to something that I love and something that I grew up with. And yeah, it's a little bit silly, but at least I enjoy doing that more than whatever it is that they're asking me to do. And he's been doing it ever since.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. That, that's freaking awesome. I wish I had that kind of, bravery to like go against like the professor's instructions, because I'm really scared of failing my classes back then. But that piece did end up super cool though. I assume that was the Mori scene in Nintendo 64. I'm not entirely sure.
This one
But I
right here.
really love yeah.
Honestly, can't say. I never played many Nintendo 64 games growing up. I'm only familiar with them mostly as an adult. I only had like a computer growing up, so
I
I played
see.
like shooters and whatnot, but nothing like this.
I see. I see.
But yeah, there was him that I interviewed, and then there was another guy. Let me see if I can find him, because I just mentioned that there's people in the gaming space that aren't just like doing like hyper detailed like draws and sketches, that they're just having fun with it, just making it a little
Mhm.
little silly and goofy. But
Mhm.
once again, like still starting with the sketch of a painting and working
Oh
through the
yeah.
layers with all the
Mhm.
colors and everything. So there's still that technical skill that goes into it.
Mhm. Yeah, this one's freaking awesome. I love the underpainting so far.
Yes, it'll be
Like
Cade.
I like how stylized it is.
Yeah, no, it definitely comes through. And Cade would
Mhm.
be the other artist that I
Oh.
interviewed.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, so he'll start with the underpainting and then go from there with all the layers. And yeah, it's once again like very
That's
simple
so
subject,
cool.
but still very very interesting to look at.
Mhm. This is really really cool. Like actually, me and my partner have been looking at like this kind of artists who like redraw scenes from pretty old games such as Minecraft, and stuff like that, and painting it on traditional mediums. So I'm kind of like just cataloging all these different artists to feel later, because we're kind of like really enjoying them recently. It's so cool. It's like it's so nostalgic, and also like somehow the traditional medium, like it makes like the low res graphics looks more alive, like it translates it better than digital art. I feel like it's like
Yeah,
it's playful,
it's
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 playful, it's nostalgic.
it's not trying to like get it as like a one-to-one match. There's no like sharp jagged lines. Your eyes kind of make up half the painting
Yeah.
itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, then he'll do pieces like this that are just a little bit more traditional.
Oh, this one is so cute. I love it. That's a little guy. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
it. I love
just
her so much.
little guy.
Mm-hmm. It's really fun. I feel like I need to practice this kind of art more, like be more playful sometimes. Like and like not take art too seriously all the time.
Do
Be
you
more
find that
like
you take it more serious all the time?
oh yeah, sometimes I take it too serious, to the point where I stress myself over not being able to like make a perfect piece, like oh man, this doesn't look as good as like my idols, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. From time to time though. Only from time to time.
I feel like that's a normal thing, especially for artists to have, though. I mean, it's
That's fair.
at the end of the day, it's a very like vulnerable thing to um, to show like any, not even just early work, but just like pieces in general. Artists, they tend to be a little bit more closed off from my experience speaking with them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's only natural because I mean, people in their day to day, they already compare themselves to the people around them
Oh
or to the
yeah.
people they see on social media. But for artists that are
Mm-hmm.
like they tend to be more introspective. That's it's a trap that you can fall into like that.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, it can be a good motivation if you channel it right, but like sometimes, you think it too I think about it too much, and sometimes it's not healthy. And I need to regulate it better, I need to channel, like getting is like I need to feel like whenever I see an inspiring work, I need to feel more motivated than like feel more beaten down sometimes, in the pursuit of like trying to improve myself.
Yeah, because it can be all too easy to look at someone who's made it in that same space and then look at your own work and compare it and be like, well, why should I bother if they're already like so much better, or if they can
Yeah,
do that, why would anyone consume my content if they can consume theirs instead? Um,
absolutely. Yep.
but that's I think that I try to ignore that as much as possible. I mean, like especially like in the podcast space, like there's there's so many people, literally millions of people that have shows that are similar to mine, or just just are operating in the space. That
Oh.
it
Mm-hmm.
can be not overwhelming, but just like kind of disappointing to look at your show and be like, man, I don't have like the best setup, I don't have like this camera and all that. But at the end of the day, I don't think much of that really matters, because
Mm-hmm.
there's no other person on the planet that is like yourself, and so nobody can have the same perspective as you. And comparing yourself to anyone, it's just it's not even like a not anywhere near a fair comparison. It's just kind of a self-defeating act. Because at the end of the day, it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you have your own style, you have your own approach to it, and if you just lean into that, eventually something will come out of it that is just so unique that eventually you're going to be the person that like look up to and be like, oh man, why can't I be more like them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very, very good point. I need to I need to hammer that in my brain. That is very true. Like, every one of us, have our own unique visions, and we just need to take the time to develop into it. you know. And I'm very happy that you made this podcast, for every one of us to share our thoughts, and have a chat with you and share with the community about our perspective in art and the art community so far. And so far, it's been a great interview. I'm really enjoying this so far. So thank you so much for, making the space for us.
No, of course. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words. I love that there's
Hmm.
enough artists out there that are willing to come on the show and talk about this stuff, because um, some of them that I've interviewed, they're just very very shy, or they've never done an interview like this before, and I totally get it.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, um, this is just yet another opportunity to showcase work,
Hmm.
and highlight the hard efforts of artists. Because when I stumbled upon your page, I was like, oh, I've seen similar works to it, but I've never really seen anything that's exactly like this in its ability to create the world and all the textures and brushes that you use. It's just it's one of one. It's unique, and that's worth highlighting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That means the world to me. Yeah, as the years go by, I guess that's what I want to work into as well, like just um being more and more personal with my art style.
Yeah, we mentioned it off stream there a little bit. How you said that
Mm-hmm.
you were leaning more into um, the kind of pieces and references that you feel attached to personally, and that as a result of that, you've been
Mm-hmm.
seeing a better response from your audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, most of my art, at least in the beginning, like nowadays I'm doing better, but like a lot of my art in the beginning, they were a lot of it is inspired by my mental health struggles. and I find solitude in seeing nature stuff, like staying in nature, thinking up stories for them. So that's where I initially came up with, with the stories in my head and the stories for these characters, which are not even my characters, but like in some level, I relate to them a lot, and I wanted to like write their story in my own vision. So that's where a lot of the inspiration came from.
Yeah, and you mentioned nature in your pieces. Is that the inspiration or like the draw that you have to it? Did that just come from, being a kid growing up where you are, just being outside all the time, or?
I guess it was because of like where I grew up, but like I grew up like in the middle of like a small town, which is sadly mostly concrete, like a concrete jungle.
Mm-hmm.
So I only had like very rare chances to go into the outdoors. But whenever I go there, it felt very special to me, and like it clung to me all the time. And it still inspires me to this day as an adult.
I see. So it's the fact that you had limited exposure to it, so that when you did have exposure, you appreciated it that much more.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, because I know very little about that part of the world, I'll admit. So my
No.
the classic Western assumption is that sure, there's like urban centers, but for the most part, it's just small towns connected by dirt roads and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of jungle all around. But I'm guessing that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's not the case for the place where I grew up, and especially the family that I grew up in, because like my family are not very outdoorsy person, so I didn't get a lot of that a lot of the chances to explore the outdoors growing up. But yeah, mentioning about American nature, actually, like I watched so many like hiking videos in the American Trail, something like the Appalachian Trail. Is that how you pronounce it? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people going out of towns, and like looking through the fields in between the two big states. To me, it's just so cool. And like reading about American mythicism, that's like going on in like the old mountains. To me, all of those are fascinating, and like it's a big inspiration in my art.
Oh, okay. So even though you couldn't get it where you were at, you were still consuming a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
content growing up, just seeing all these
Yeah.
different nature trails and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
And
love
that,
watching nature documentaries, hiking videos, exploration videos, stuff like that, and like in my head, I'm like writing stories in my head about, what kind of folklore might be going on in such places, what kind of hidden creatures you can't see in like such secluded places. That's where my imagination goes to every time I see those kinds of videos.
I see. And is there a lot of nature-based folklore from where you're from? What is there like a little base of the culture that's built in that, or?
Um, I I'm pretty sure there is like a nature-based folklore from Indonesia, but like not no none of them is like crossing my mind right now. But there is like so many ghost stories here. I find them really cool too, but they're not necessarily like nature connected. They're just like, ooh, creepy ghosts. Like, don't do this, or like this ghost might come haunting you. And they do inspire some of my character designs as well sometimes.
I see. Okay, that kind of reminds me of how Japan they have a good chunk in their culture where it's all these like spirits, and there's so many like all these rituals that you have to do to ward them off. There's
Oh yeah.
not really
Mm-hmm.
anything like that where I'm from, but I've heard of that part in the world.
Oh yeah, yeah. It is something very similar from my country. It's just different types of ghosts, different types of rituals, but in general, it's pretty much the same. Like when you're trespassing a certain area, you better not do this, you better not do that, because you might invoke the spirit that's living in those areas, to be wrathful at you, stuff like that. And then like there are certain processions to ward off those spirits, stuff like that. It's pretty
I
cool
see.
to me. It's very inspiring for me.
Interesting. So that like growing up, that's something that you had to keep track of as a kid. Like the don't walk on this side of the road. Don't do this. Don't do that.
Kinda, yeah, kinda.
I see. Yeah. My
I,
growing up, I didn't really have a lot of superstitions. My mom just didn't allow like whistling in the house or like there's like certain other things, but
mm,
it was never really tied to like a spirit or some kind of like a ghost. It was just more of like a cultural idea.
I see. I see. I see. Yeah, I guess there's like we also have like the don't wait or you might you might summon a ghost or something like that. But it's interesting that you guys also have something like that over there, even though it's not tied to the superstition.
Yeah, well, so me personally, I'm not based in America, so I don't know many American customs like that. But
I
I'm
see.
based in Canada right now, and
Oh, I
I
see.
originate from Russia.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. That's very interesting. So you immigrated to Canada along with your family?
Yeah, in the early 2000s, we came over here. It was either that or the States, and I don't remember why my parents chose Canada. But yeah, I've been here for most of my life. I've traveled to little parts here and there, not too much of the world, but
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit. But yeah, mostly just been up here in Canada. And there's not really any superstitions in our culture that I can think of. I mean, like the classic one of like don't cross the road if a black cat crosses your path.
Oh, yeah.
That's I
Yeah.
feel like that's universal though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, pretty much. I mean, nowadays, cats, they're everywhere, I don't think anyone in my area is like superstitious about black cats in general. They see a cat, they're just like, kitty, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
They're just little guys, yeah. But used to, maybe when I was still a toddler, way back in the early 2000s, yeah, people are still kind of superstitious about that.
Interesting. Yeah. It's it's weird to think about how those customs come about because I genuinely don't know why it is that black cats have that association to them or that mysticism
Yeah.
to them. It doesn't really make all that much sense. Maybe just because like they're
Mm-hmm.
different. Um I don't know. Maybe I think it's probably just it had a meaning at some point, but that message over the years has become so diluted and kind of lost in history that it doesn't really make sense anymore. But it still kind of remains as an idea that
Mm-hmm.
we associate with like bad luck, but in reality, don't really know what the root of that is.
Yeah. True. That's very true.
Yeah, and now that you're an adult, because you mentioned that you never really saw a lot of nature as you were a kid, do you have any like goals and aspirations, just like doing some traveling yourself now that you actually have the freedom to do that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess like one of the motivations I have in like taking in all these works, taking in like all these projects and commissions is to like be able to afford. Okay, first of all, I want to like settle down, in like somewhere in like a place that I can call my own, safely. And secondly, to go traveling, within within my own means. I just want to like see other parts of the world. I want to like see and try to understand other people's cultures, about the way other people live. I want to like hear about other people's stories, about the way they live. I want to explore the nature, definitely, but stuff like that has always like interested me. So, hopefully one day, hopefully in the near future that can come true. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, any places in particular?
Hmm. I guess I can start by exploring my own country. Not gonna lie, because Indonesia has like so many like beautiful, beautiful spots, and like so many different cultures in like our own country that that a lot of like our own citizens have yet to explore. So I would love to explore that, and probably the next places will probably something like Japan, of course, you know, and Europe. Actually, like European countries are so beautiful and they're like very rich in old buildings. I don't know. I just like seeing. I visited Europe once last year, and I just found that every single corner of their cities are very beautiful to me. Um, and you know, maybe I wish that one day I could go back there and explore some more. You know, explore more of the cuisine. You know, maybe talk to the locals. You know, about how life is over there, stuff like that.
I see. And where did you go in Europe?
I actually just like went along a local tour, you know, from my town. We visited like so many countries in just a week. It's basically like Europe speed run, you know, in that
Oh,
sense.
gotcha.
We just, yeah, it's just a kind of tour, but you know, it was really interesting during the short period of time I was there. You know, I was really inspired by a lot of things. And you know, one day I hope that I can go back there and enjoy my traveling in my own pace, you know, without being like rushed by the tour group, something like that.
Yeah, and I know what you mean about how like every corner you turned there was some kind of historical landmark. It was
Yeah.
I've only been there a handful of times. My
Mm.
longest trip was when I went to Spain, and it was really weird to see like all these uh, brick laden streets and all these historical buildings
Yes.
that used to be remnants of a castle, and then the next door it's like a McDonald's.
Yeah. Yes, yes. That's exactly how I felt about it as well. Like there's like castles everywhere, you know, like all these old historical buildings, you know, all the brick pavements that, you know, like Lord knows which year that came from. And then, you know, it's just a McDonald's inside those buildings. It was really funny to me. But yeah, it was part of the charm for me, you know. It was really interesting. And you know, every time I go to these places, I'm like, you know, what might this building be used for, you know, in the past, you know, what's the history? I want to learn more about it one day.
No, I definitely encourage you to go. There's one place that I think you might like most. Now, I just need to find where this architect lived. His name is Antoni Gaudi. He was a
Oh.
famous architect who he put in a lot of inspiration from the aquatic world and ocean life
Mm-hmm.
into his creations. And let me see, I think it's Barcelona.
Oh yeah, I've seen like pictures of these buildings like so many times. These are so insane. Like these are so insanely awesome.
Yeah, it's
Like the
the
cathedral is so crazy.
Yes, it is. It is incredible to see it in person, and I luckily had the chance to go. It's still under construction, but just by looking at it, you can tell it's not the same design as like a Gothic church somewhere in England or Germany.
Yes. It's like it's so organic in a way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that would definitely be the word to use because it has
Mm-hmm.
like the general shape and structure of it, but um, still, there's all these motifs that kind of I don't know, express something more natural to it.
Yes. It's almost like a natural coral formation to me. Almost something like that. Or a dripstone inside a cavern ceilings.
Yeah, and when you go in, it's even crazier just because like just about everywhere you look, there's the stained glass, and as on the outside, then on the
Mm-hmm.
inside, all the shapes and everything. It's not all symmetrical. It seems just very real,
Yeah.
like it grew up out of the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, this I mean I don't share my personal projects anywhere pretty much, but you know, I'm like building my own story on my free time. And like for one of the environments, I am actually accidentally referencing to his architecture work for like one of the castle environments that I'm working on. And I didn't even know that's like the name of the architect. So it is really cool to like find out who's like the designer of all these like buildings that I'm referencing off of.
Yeah, that'll be on Tony Gaudi, and it was His life story is interesting. I don't know much about it, but from what little I do know, he actually ended up wandering the streets of Barcelona in his last few years. He was considered insane, um,
Oh no.
because he had just put so much of his life into his work that um, there wasn't really a separation of the two. He lived through all the different designs that he did, and
I see.
they eventually found him. Like, he had a beard so long you could barely tell who he was. He was just going around the street. Then he collapses, and they bring him to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I think he died on the bed, and then once they like trim his beard, they look at him. They're like, "Oh my God, this is this is him. This is the guy. This is Antoni Gaudi. This is the man who helped design all these great buildings." And he was
Mm-hmm.
just he just went crazy.
That is crazy. It's crazy. Oh my God. Like we can all be passionate about our craft, but I think we also gotta love ourselves. I have like so I mean like it's nowhere near close this guy because that is pretty insane. But going to art school, I heard like so many stories from colleagues and professors, and they're talking about their other colleagues who they're so dedicated in art. They want to improve so bad, not just for not even to earn others recognitions. They're just like for personal satisfaction. Why
Hmm.
can't I be like Kim Jong-gi and they draw like like they draw almost literally 24 hours. They sleep only once every other day, and they end up with like a ring inside their heart because eventually they collapse, or with like an irreversible carpal tunnel. I'm like, come on, man. Let's not do that. That's a little too bad.
Do you find that that's still like a very prevalent way of life for a lot of artists, just from what you've seen?
Oh yeah, definitely. I personally know some people who are a lot like that. Not that extreme, but in my own personal standards, is pretty extreme. The lengths that they go to just to accomplish their personal art goals, their personal art studies. They motivate me so much. Sometimes I feel like I don't put in like as much work as I need to, at my age and at my level. But of course, um, like the people around me always remind me that health is always number one. Health is number one, and like my passion as important as it is, it needs to always be number two. Because like without my health, I cannot continue my passion. So I still need to always put my health first, get enough rest. If I'm burnt out, I need to sit back down, get inspired again and get back to drawing instead of like just pushing forward, keep on pushing and pushing. Because I don't think that's ever gonna end up good.
Yeah, because I mean, when if you're lying in the hospital, your brushes and your pencils, they're not going to take care of you. They're not,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially in a lot of art classes, a lot of art resources, some teachers, I know they mean well, but a lot of these online art teachers are, you need to put in the grind because like the time the time you put in your work, and your skill are, they grow alongside. I forgot the proper term for it, but like they grow along together, but
Hmm.
it doesn't realistically work like that. There's gonna be ups and downs no matter what you do. Sometimes you're slower, sometimes you're faster. And like if you work 24 hours, if you draw like let's say 12 hours a day, that doesn't mean you're gonna be, like the growth isn't gonna be like exactly like I don't know how to put it into words.
Well,
Um,
it's not going to be like equivalent. Like, just because you put in 12 hours, it doesn't
yes,
mean that you're
yes,
going to get 12 hours worth of money or whatever, like
yes,
skill back.
exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's oh my god, the words was lost in my brain, Like it's not that exact, It's not like exact science. You need equal
Hmm.
parts grind, equal parts rest, and equal parts consuming other media, in my opinion, in order to like properly improve in life. That's my take.
No, absolutely. Because I mean, there's something to be said about being in your early 20s when you don't have a family of your own that you're starting yet, or any like
Mm-hmm.
major responsibilities, and pulling all-nighters or working
Mm-hmm.
extra long on a project, or just like being stressed out and whatnot. Like it's actually, I would argue, like just like the best time to do it, because that's when you can take the most risk, and that's when you don't have as much to lose. Like it's one thing to be a student and to be working on some final piece for your last project in a class to get that
Mm-hmm.
grade. And it's another thing to be in your 40s and have a family with a kid, and you're staying up till 4
Yeah.
a.m., sketching this for a client or whatnot. Like those are just, it's completely different. So when you're young, it's like
Yeah.
absolutely the best time to do it. But you have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, like it's also not worth it. Like half the time, to stress over things like that. At least like from my perspective, just most of the stuff that I used to stress about in my early 20s, I look back and they seem absolutely absurd to me, because they ended up meaning very little in reality.
I see.
None of those grades matter at this point. Once you get out of that world of university, um, and it's the skills I learned along the way that have become useful. But some of those nights staying up like extra late working on stuff, I kind of tricked myself into thinking that, oh yeah, this is gonna go somewhere, this is gonna mean something. Like, nope, doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean it. Just because you put in the work, just because something's hard doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna bring you any good.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, like those hard things, there's like some merit to putting time into it, but like it's not your whole world. It's not your entire world. And like the world isn't gonna end if you fail at it. Like I think everything's just a balance. You need to do the hard stuff, and also you need to do the stuff that makes you happy. That's my take at the end of the day. That is very true. I'm like still going through my 20s right now. I'm still learning so much about the world, and like how to function as an adult who barely has her frontal lobe developed, you know.
Hmm.
And I hope that a lot of the choices that I make right now, I won't regret it in my 30s. That's my only hope.
Yeah, no, that's a good mentality to have, because at the end of the day, like if I've learned anything, it's like at one point high school, grades like 9 to 12, when you're 16 to 18, 19, it seems like the entire world, or your entire life
Oh
and world,
yeah.
depends on you choosing
Yeah.
the right school, or choosing the right friends, or what have you. And
Mm-hmm.
then you go to university and you realize, oh, that actually meant very little. But then university kind of tricks you into thinking, no, this is for real. This is the real thing that you've been working towards. And then
Yes.
you leave university and you're like, okay, well, but when does the real stuff start? I don't understand.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I guess it's like the effect of being in a close environment, like being in a close environment such as classes, universities where you're always grouped with like a bunch of people in a close environment, and maybe even work, if you work in an office settings. It's really easy to get trapped into a circle, and thinking like there is no world outside of that.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a trap that you can fall into. But then every now and again, I mean, especially as an artist, I'd imagine, then when stuff like this happens, right? Did you hear about this piece of art getting
Yeah.
sold for like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Then something like this happens and you're like,
Definitely.
well, why do I bother? Why do I why do I bother
Exactly.
if somebody could just do this and then make hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Things like this, and of course nowadays AI art, I feel like it's very, very easy to fall into despair if that's like all you see and all you know all the time, if you're extremely online. But that is not true. That's not true. There's still a lot of space for you to grow. There's still a lot of space for you to like make mistakes, and grow, and for people to still accept you regardless of what's going on in the society, in the art community. I think there's still like a lot of chances for artists to express themselves, regardless of, quote unquote modern art and how silly it can be. Regardless of AI art, I do truly believe that there will always be a space for artists. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've made it a point to ask just about everybody I interview what their take on AI art is, but just from what you've said, that seems to be like the prevailing perspective is that at the end of the day, it's like okay, it's gonna make
Mm.
things a lot easier for people, but like with anything else, like when the iPad came out, it's just yet another tool. It doesn't mean that like someone's cheating. It doesn't mean that the art is in any way in jeopardy because of people having access to this tool. It just means okay, well now the landscape has shifted, so how are you going to
Mm-hmm.
adjust to it?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think like quote unquote art made by AI art, I think that's gonna target a specific type of audience, and like art still made by by human artists are also gonna have its own specific audience. Like I don't think either one is gonna win at the end of the day. My me personally, I don't stand for AI art, obviously, but like at the end of the day, it's something that is already in the world, and I don't think people are ever gonna stop using it. But also, I think there's a space for everything to exist. Like AI art is gonna be used by a certain group of people, but it's also not gonna like obliterate the existence of art made by human artists. That's what I think right now.
No, absolutely not. If anything, I would think that it actually gives more legitimacy to people that are making art, whether it's digital or physical, because so
Mm-hmm.
long as you can prove that you did it yourself, then that immediately kind of gives you, I don't know, just a heightened impression that this is something that's real and genuine, and that's always going to be not always, but it's there's always going to be a market for that kind of stuff, and especially if like
Mm-hmm.
every third person you see is like making AI art, it's like yeah, but check out something that I did by myself and that actually took years and years and years
Yeah.
of practice, and that makes your work stand out in comparison to the larger group that's working with the generative art.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the soulfulness that human art has, that is something that can never be replaced by something generated by the computer. Like art generated by the computer, it is for convenience sake, I feel like, but it is not for for an artistic sake. It is not for something that you're supposed to connect to on a deeper level. you know I've never seen like a single AI art that I feel like invokes something in me. Like genuinely, I haven't seen any of those. Like it's just oh, a picture, that kind of it looks all right. It looks pleasing to the eyes, but also there isn't anything deeper into it, I feel like. And it's easily dismissible for me, and also I believe for other people who genuinely enjoy human art, I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I can't really say that I've had the different reaction to that. Like, one of my favorite AI artists right now is this guy named Mac Bakanai,
Mm.
and
Uh-huh.
he does these desk landscapes where he essentially creates this space. Let me see if I can find it. A lot of his works have this like very grainy, filmy
I see.
touch to them, but there's a couple that
Yeah.
yeah, like this piece.
Okay. This almost looks like nice. This almost looks like it has like a 90s film filter to it.
Yeah, it really has, like, he certainly has his own aesthetic, which I have yet to see replicated in any like significant way. But he had this one
I
series
see.
where he essentially just had these setups of desks in all these different places. And if you look closer, like you
Mm,
can tell that it's AI generated, but
yeah.
it looks almost photorealistic.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly AI art. If anything, it's a great I find it's a great reference point. Like if you just want to see an idea of a visual concept, or of a concept visualized rather, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great starting point for any projects that you're just, instead of like taking the time to actually sketch it out. It's like, okay, wait, like what if, how would this look in this kind of shade, in this kind of lighting, in this kind of setting, and then using that for inspiration. Like, yeah, certainly, because like I can't, like, drawing something like this out would take so much time, even digitally, um, that if I just wanted to know before I actually even started the piece, like what would this actually look like? What would be the vibe? How could I change the composition here? It's great for that, I find.
I suppose, yeah. That is fair. I guess that's just not the way for me, because like for me personally, I prefer building everything by scratch, from scratch, I mean. But I do see what you mean.
Yeah, and they'll get better over time. There will be like even this, I bet if you showed like your parents, they would assume that it was real somewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely 100%. if if I show like even like a pretty unrealistic AI video, they will still believe it, yeah. Like there's no avoiding it at this point.
Yeah. No, it's I like it. I'm a fan of it. I'm glad that
Mm-hmm.
that it gives more people um kind of a much easier way to get into the art space without having to put
That's
as many
fair.
hours in, which, yeah, I could see why some people think that that's like a form of cheating, but like at the end of the day, um it's, like I said, it's just gonna make it so that people like yourself and people that actually make the art and can prove that they made it, whether it's you're showing a video of yourself making it, a time lapse, or whatnot, or some kind of digital signature, that's just gonna make it more valuable.
I think the problem with AI art is not that people like artists are seeing it as cheating, because digital artists, we use like a plethora of different methods to get what we want.
Hmm.
And it's just a way to get into art. And like if AI art is purely that, I don't think any of us would have any problem. But the initial problem came from the fact that the contents that AI art came from are stolen art to begin with. Stolen human art, stolen illustrations, um, stolen 3D renders, stolen photographies. That's like those are like where all the art styles came from in AI generated art. To the point where sometimes there is like a generated image that looks quite similar to like an existing artist, but like there is no legal way for these artists to seek justice. Oops, we've already put it in the machine, there's like no taking it back. you know so in that way it is kind of like unethical in that sense. But like if you take that away, AI art is a pretty powerful tool. I will say that. But sadly it did come from a pretty unethical background.
So you mean like the training data that they use to create all these models, it was built off of like scraping the internet for images, whether it's DeviantArt or Twitter or Tumblr
Yeah.
or any of these
Oh
platforms?
yeah. Yeah, that's literally where those came from. And like some of these AI companies even charge for their services, even though their services are built off of stolen contents. And not to mention, of course, the environmental impact that comes out of AI art, which is not the best. just to like generate just to generate a single image. So there's like a lot of things to consider with AI art, in my opinion. Not to disregard like how helpful it could be though. Like it is freaking awesome, but at the same time, it has kind of harmed a lot of people along the way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to how I think it was Picasso that said this, that good artists imitate and great artists steal, and it's referencing this idea that just about everything that we make, or any ideas that we have, they're not really original, because at somewhere down the line there is some inspiration that you got from someone else that has already made that work, and you're just simply having your own kind of point of view on it. So just about every style, every painting, everything, it has an echo of an influence that came before us that we are now living through and creating through our own art. Um, and AI art kind of it
Mm-hmm.
took that to its logical conclusion, and and did it like a machine would. It scanned all sorts of inspiration and now built this tool that is uh, is able to generate anything from all these different
Mm-hmm.
cultural references across the globe. So it essentially it accelerated what humans do on a very industrial level.
I guess that's a fair point.
Yeah. And the issue of copyright,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say. I don't know. I feel differently about it. Just because I think that, especially with the explosion of AI art, that this idea of copyright, I think it's going to be non-existent in the next like couple of years, just because it's going to be so hard to prove who made what at which time, unless there's some way to attach a digital signature, and even then that could certainly be faked. um like, back in like the early 2000s or like the 90s, when DVDs and cassettes were a thing, anyone could
Mm-hmm.
videotape like a show and then just go on their street corner and just sell them. I mean, in Russia, it's very common that you go into a supermarket and at some point they're selling like bootleg video games or music albums,
Mm-hmm.
or what have you. There's not really anyone that can stop anyone from like ripping Simpsons episodes and putting them on a DVD and selling them, unless like the authorities like find out. But if they don't, like, they don't have like police going around and checking every piece of content or every piece of art that's made. Like, people could actually still make a living doing
I
that kind of
guess,
stuff.
but I mean, I guess the topic at hand is more like the ethicality of human-made art.
Hmm.
Because when you talk about pirated stuff, as silly as it sounds, I mean, it's still human-made art. And at the end of the day, I don't condone like some types of piracies, but I feel like sharing human art is always good. Whereas for like AI art, like it is true what you say that AI art, it steals of artists, just like artists get inspired by other artists' work. But like computers, they don't have to study the art style first. They don't have to
Hmm.
like take the time to truly understand why the artist, the artist choose a certain art style, like a certain way to compose their artworks. They don't really try to like understand the anatomy of something.
Hmm.
It's kind of like just like an elaborate Photoshop in that sense. At least to me. Like
Yeah,
the
like
human
AI art is
struggle.
not. It's not doing
Yeah.
the underpainting. It's not. It's not sketching figures. It just makes it.
It's not just about like the sketching. It's about like the struggle of like trying to make an art piece come to life, like the brainstorming of it. Like what am I trying to communicate with this artwork, the communication part, like the struggling to the struggle to make the artwork look nice. Cause I feel like the struggle is also part of the creative process. I feel like that is inseparable from human art. I feel like that's an integral part of it that computer art is missing completely.
I see what you mean. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
understand. Yeah, because even the little art that I've done, in my life, I do understand what you mean when you say like the struggle when you're working on a piece and uh things just aren't clicking and it's like, oh my god, my lines need to be better, the way that I draw the eyes should be better, the figures just they're not where I want them to be. And part of
Mm-hmm.
that like negotiation that you do with yourself as you work through it, it
Mm-hmm.
it adds to the satisfaction when it's all done and everything comes together and you're like, okay, I just need to trust in the process and eventually I'll get there. And then when you do get there, it's like, okay, all right, this is done. This is great. And then you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, and other people, they see the finished work of art, and they're like, oh my god, this is great, or oh, it's it's okay, like it could use some work. But whatever reaction they have to it, they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand the hours that went into this to that piece, and then even before that,
Mm-hmm.
the hours that went into you. Doing it in your sketchbook over and over again, or all the years like learning all these different styles and techniques and all that work.
Yeah.
Only the artist knows that struggle, which is why it's so difficult for them um to get over that experience and see it as the audience sees it, because the audience only sees the finished example. They don't know all the effort that went into it beforehand. So to the artist, it's a fundamentally different perspective.
That is very much true. Yeah. I will say, if you're like if we're having this like sort of conversation with a fellow artist, I will say they will like immediately know which kind of art is like AI generated or like made by a human artist. Hmm. Like even if it's like an AR art that is redrawn by a human artist, like we can definitely tell because most of the time AI art is lacking in storytelling. That's mostly that's the problem. Like it is stunning in its visuals, but a lot of the times it's lacking like the heart in storytelling. I feel like, and I think that's like the most important part of art that is missing. Like art is about communicating, it's about storytelling, and the struggle into telling, into like speaking to your audience, what's in your mind, what is the story that you have to tell. That is like an integral part that is missing from AI art, I feel like. And yeah, sure, if you show it to like an untrained eye, to like a regular person, they might not be able to like find the difference. But to fellow artists, the people in the community, or just like a person who really really appreciates art, I'm sure that it means a lot to them. I'm sure that the difference means a lot to them. Just like let's say like let's say in the luxury space, maybe like a fake designer item, doesn't mean as much to like the regular person. But like let's say to the people in the designer community, like that fashion item, the authenticity of it means a lot to them. But it's only for
Hmm.
like that certain community.
I see what you mean.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but for the people who do appreciate it, it means a lot. And just like everything in life, I guess you can't really please everyone, but like to the people that whose work means a lot, like your work means a lot to that person, I think that's all that matters.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of looking at it. And it's interesting that you say that if you show it to like a trained artist, that they can actually tell if it's AI generated or not. And I wonder if that's going to go away at some point. If the AI is going to get so good at making it that it's going to be nearly indistinguishable
Mm-hmm.
from the real thing, which could very well happen. I think it just might, as these models become more powerful and get
Maybe.
trained on more data.
Maybe, yeah, might be. But regardless of what happens, I'm still gonna make my own art. the way that I want it to, AI or no AI. And, I also hope that other artists, whether they're professional or aspiring, whether or not they want to use AI, I just wish that they will keep creating. That's all. Because creation is a wonderful thing. I love seeing other people's perspectives, written into art, other people's stories. And I just think that creation in general is like the most important part of humanity. And, even though AI art, might be disappointing a lot of aspiring artists, I just want to make sure that they keep doing their way, because, I don't think human artists are going away anytime soon. Once again, there will be space for AI art, and there will be space for handmade human art. That's my take on
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely.
it. Mm-hmm.
These new developments, it should not discourage people that are active in that space and that are worried about it taking jobs away or anything. Um, I think that is an incorrect perspective to have because
Mm-hmm.
as I said before, it's just gonna add to the legitimacy of your art if you're able to make it by hand, but it'll also show not just to the trained people that can actually detect whether it's AI art or not, but I think eventually it'll become more um plain to see that the story behind that piece, whatever it is, or the
Mm-hmm.
work that it took to get there, that in and of itself is value enough to appreciate it. And with the explosion of AI in this space and in tech development and all that stuff, at the end of the day, it's just it gives people more leverage. It gives people more leverage and more opportunities to uh, make their own impact on whichever space they operate in. Like a lot of people in the tech space these days, they say, "Oh, like why would I bother going to school for coding? Why would I bother even doing this job if AI is
Mm-hmm.
simply going to take it over?" It's like, okay, well, now you have the opportunity to start your own business. Now you can actually, instead of having to learn all of these different languages and whatnot, you can get AI to at least help you with it partially, um, to get there, and you can fill in the gaps from there and still have
Oh
an original
man.
idea and still build something yourself. Like it's there's still a lot of room for people to operate in. I mean, it's one thing if you're like a truck driver and you're worried about automation taking away your job. Like it's a little bit of a different scenario. But in the creative space, if you're making anything, AI is just I wouldn't say it's a net benefit, but it's not a direct competitor.
Hmm. One thing I mean, like, I know for a fact though that AI has been like taking art industry jobs
Oh,
in
for
like
sure,
a
for
couple
sure.
fields. Yeah, and that does suck, Like maybe not entirely, Of course, AI is not replacing human artists entirely. That's not gonna happen. But in some spaces in industry art, that does have taken like a lot of the spots. Cause like nowadays, a lot of the job openings for industry art is, they're gonna hire artists, and those artists are gonna, their job is entirely just to create art assets that is gonna be fed into the machine, and that kind of sucks. It makes you feel like you are entirely disposable, like you're just like a fuel to be fed into the machine, and after that you are disposable. That's what it feels like to me.
No, that's totally fair, and I understand that perspective. And just as a recent example, Marvel for their show Secret Invasion, I think it came out like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The intro to it, they were among the first to use AI art in it, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And I understand the perspective that people would have with this, especially artists if they're getting laid off simply because another some new model came out that can essentially replicate what they do, not perfectly but good enough
Mm-hmm.
for the business owner. Um, to that
Yeah.
to that I say, well, now you're free to do your own thing. Now you're free to do your own project if you want to um, have a like a digital collection of your works, or a book in print, or some physical objects. Like AI is kind of a double-edged sword in that way. Because on one hand, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that lose their jobs, but on the other hand, now they're also free to make their own worlds. And the transition, I'm not saying that it's painless. I'm not saying that like people aren't going to have difficulty,
Mm-hmm.
making ends meet or paying the bills. So I don't want to come off as someone that's ignorant to that, but at the end of the day, it's going to allow you to be like, okay, fine. So now I'm not part of this project. Well, I'm going to start my own thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's fair. There's actually an interesting take that my partner said a while ago. He said that, maybe a good outcome that might come out of AI art is like these people who's like addicted to creating things with AI art, they might want to like get more, like they have like a more detailed vision, and they might want to start drawing because of it. And I was like, that's actually really interesting, you know? Like could AI art be like a gateway for people to actually try hand drawing? Because they might not be able to like get the results that they exactly want out of AI art. So they might venture into creating themselves. And I think that's like a pretty optimistic thinking. I think that's pretty awesome if that's the case in the future.
Oh, definitely. No, I think that anything that allows people to um have an easier way to get into creative expression is by default just a net positive for everyone on this planet. Um, Even if it's AI art, as your
Mm-hmm.
partner there said that they might just be working on a piece and they're just frustrated with the way that it's coming out and the generation isn't perfect, and they're like, all right, screw this. I'm just gonna like take this template
Yeah.
and rework it in Photoshop or do this or do that, and then before you know it,
Uh-huh.
there's only maybe 10 or 20% of the piece that was AI, but eventually they added their own flavor into it. Yeah, no, 100%. I
Yeah.
could definitely see that being a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that'll be a pretty cool outcome actually, if that were to come true.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like the easier that it becomes to express yourself, and the less of a barrier there is for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the more that this stuff gets put out there, the more inspiration there is for people to make their own worlds, or in whichever medium, whether it's actually painting or digital work or even something like written poetry or what have you. Um, Everyone benefits from it. And like right now, I think we're just in that stage of growing pains where we're discovering, like, okay, well, this means that certain artists get laid off, and this means that other people lose their jobs, or that the market shifts this way here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why
Mm-hmm.
it seems so kind of turbulent, because we're kind of figuring it out as we go. There's not really nobody in school ever taught us like, hey, by the way, one day AI art is going to be so good that you're not going to be able to tell a
Yeah.
photo from something that's actually real, and nobody ever prepared us for this. So we're experimenting, we're figuring it out, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, there's going to be a lot of things that go bad, but on the other hand, I think we're gonna come out of it and realize that, oh, there's a lot of good that can come from this too, and it may not be things that we can certainly predict right now, but I have faith. I have faith, because it's, as you said, like, creative
That's
expression
fair.
is the most important thing, one of the most important things in life, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, as necessary as having food or water or shelter. And there will never, ever, ever be an end to that, so long as humanity still lives, right? Like we're not really
Yeah,
going to
that's
see an end to
fair.
that anytime soon. People in major conflicts in World War II and World War One, and even before that, they were still creating art. Even the people that were caught
Mm-hmm.
in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it as a net negative. I have faith. I understand the negative consequences, but I have faith that we're gonna come on the other side of this, and eventually it'll level out, and people are gonna calm down a little bit about it, and we'll actually have something positive out of it.
I hope so. my only hope is for that, like aspiring artists, they will always have like a place to create art while also be financially benefited from. I suppose, like they could still make a career out of it in the future. That's all I hope for.
Yeah, likewise. And speaking of that, how do you find the market these days? Is it like fairly intuitive, like in terms of like setting up like a print shop or finding people to give you commissions? Like how does that usually go for you?
Oh yeah, it is definitely way more intuitive nowadays. There's like a lot more tools. The payment methods are a lot more accessible nowadays. I feel like, although I do have to say, like with America, setting tariffs nowadays, it does make online sales so much harder
Really?
recently because yes, because like so much of the global customers are a lot of them are from the US, and setting tariffs on international sellers, it makes like smaller creators more limited in the way that they can make earnings from their creations these days. But aside from there, like about platforms, about like the reach, about the market, I feel like it's doing very well nowadays. There's like always something for everyone.
Hmm. So when you say tariffs, like what exactly are they targeting? Like I have a hard time understanding how you can target a tariff against a digital artifact.
Oh, I guess for commissions there is no problem. Mostly there are no problems for like digital commissions, but for physical goods, for merchandise artists who create like physical objects, apparels, fashion apparels,
Mm.
charms, prints like that, something that you have to ship, there's like an import export tariffs nowadays going to the US. And
Mm.
I know that that has made like so many online shop sellers, lives a lot more difficult lately.
I see. I see. Yeah. Well, because a commission, that's just you PayPal someone or
Oh
Western
yeah.
Union or whatever. That's just
Mm-hmm.
money getting sent across. But yeah, for something more physical, depending on where they source the material from and the shipping and the import fees. Okay, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, things like that. Especially if like, I mean, like there are also like a lot of sellers in the Western hemisphere. Like sellers who are also from the US, who are also catering to US or Canadians. I feel like people in those areas doesn't have that much problem, but people from like the other part of the world, especially since international shipping is like already very expensive to begin with, like the addition of these tariffs are making it even harder for them to like make their items sell these days, I feel like.
Mm.
So like a lot of like the people I know, my mutuals, a lot of business owners that I've watched, they're all just hoping for like the tariffs to go away at some point, I feel like.
Is it a consideration? Okay, this might be stupid, but what if you used like a North American vendor that allowed you to have the shirts and materials and whatnot be built there, and so your North American customers or Western Hemisphere customers can use that instead, and then you have another shop set up for all the other parts of the world. Would that make sense? Or
I guess yeah, that is one way of doing it. Like people who have an imprint account, which is like like they're a printing company, so you just upload your artwork there, and then they do the printing and shipping for you. Or
mm,
websites like Redbubble, which prints the merchandises for you already, and like they're already in the US part of the world. That will be like a lot. That does make the work a lot easier. But like sometimes it doesn't really work out that way. Maybe like the artist wants to make something a lot more specific that with the resources that's only available in their area, and they have to ship it manually,
I see.
something like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is there a particular part of the world where you find that you're getting more attention in terms of your sales, or is it just kind of all over the place?
Oh, definitely the US. Like the US people are the most enthusiastic people I find when it comes to art, and I really really appreciate their support in all of these years. It is extremely humbling. And but I do get customers from other parts of the world from time to time as well. Like there are people from like Australia, there are people from Europe, there are people from Brazil, there's like also people from Asia, but like a lot of them do come from the US.
I see. Any particular reason for it? Or is it just because that's, that major hub for business? They have population of like 300 million. Gaming and cultural motifs like that are just, very popular in their culture, or
I guess so. I'm also not too knowledgeable in this area, unfortunately.
I see. Well, hey, yeah, no, that's great to hear. That
Hmm.
people are loving your work there. I mean, yeah, they have tons of conventions going on all the time. So,
They do,
um,
yeah.
I feel like in the future, if you can make it out here to set up a booth or two, you probably will do really well there.
I hope so too. I hope that I can visit the US one day and like meet all my friends and like meet all the artists that I like and finally get to see them and their works in person. It'll be like an amazing experience for me in the future. Really excited for that. Really excited for like that opportunity to come.
Right on. And so in the future, where do you see yourself kind of like going as an artist? Do you have any new collections coming up? Any new themes or styles that you would want to explore? Anything that you have in mind right now?
Um I will say I'm pretty happy with my art style and the themes that I'm going for right now. I feel like I feel like I'm finally genuinely expressing myself for the first time since, since my teenage years, since when I was still exploring art. So my plans for the future is to just like keep exploring my current art style and keep telling my story, keep telling what I have in my mind, and hopefully it still resonates with people even in the future. That's what I hope for. And also maybe one day in the future I can get involved with like an official project, maybe in visual development for like a series or maybe a game. That will be pretty cool. That will be a pretty cool opportunity to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of people working on indie games these days that are always looking for artists, whether it's for scenery or for the actual character design and whatnot. So no,
Mm-hmm.
I have faith that you'll be able to find something, because a lot of the pieces that you do, they already match that world. They already exist in that kind of medium. It's just it's in a 2D
Yeah.
space. Now just making it 3D or just translating it to something different, it wouldn't really be all that different, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. True. It's very true.
Yeah, it's too bad Nintendo doesn't pay enough attention to its community and fans, because I feel like they would have been great place to showcase their work. That is strange. Like of all the game developer like companies,
Mm-hmm.
they're really like the most infamous when it comes to uh, not just ignoring but like actively making it difficult for people to create things from their IP.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. I guess that's also like where their originality comes from. I'm not like Nintendo is like far from being a perfect company, but I do appreciate their visions a lot of the times.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely singular in how they craft their worlds and the games and the kind of stories that they
Yes.
do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I've just heard like especially from like the Smash community that they do little to nothing to help them or support them, and oftentimes if creative work gets enough hype on the internet, will issue copyright notices and actively try to stop people from creating with their work, which I don't know. That seems really silly on my part. Like people love what you're making and they're celebrating
Yeah.
it. Like you're not out here saying like, "Oh, hey, check out my bootleg Zelda game." It's like, "No, like look, check out this painting that I made.
Yeah.
Enjoy it."
Yeah. I guess is I don't know. I feel like It is especially like that with a lot of Japanese game companies, especially in the way that, like the companies are more secluded to their fan base, than companies from other world, I feel like. But also I kind of appreciate them for it. Like they're kind of staying true to their visions. And like especially Nintendo, like they're very original, and like I always enjoy their games, like it's very whimsical, and I feel like whenever I play any one of their games, it has never felt different than when I first played it when I was still a little kid, unlike a lot of other games nowadays. I feel like, so that's one thing I appreciate from their creations.
Yeah, they're definitely singular. There's not really anything
Yeah.
like Nintendo in North America here. It's a
Oh yeah, definitely.
very very unique collection of stories and ideas there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as for games, I feel like my main inspiration, as a lot of my followers already know, is like mostly comes from Software games. Like I just always love like their dark fantasy themes, how weird their creature designs are. Like they are so weird and so terrifying, and I love terrifying things. And like again, like how a lot of the storytelling is like from the environment. They don't even like say it out loud in the text, in the storyline. You just have to like keep on exploring the areas, read random item descriptions, like really notice the character designs. And like it's really interesting to me when like a media has like so much to dig into. And I feel like that's like one of the uniqueness of like from somewhere that I really like.
I see. And have you played the new game? I think it's called Night Rain.
Not yet, actually. Not yet, sadly. It is in my wish list though. I do have to get to playing it at one point, because right now I'm like still focusing on like all the leftover commissions and projects that I have, again. So, when I have more free time, I do look forward to consuming more media, playing more games, watching more series, stuff like that.
Well, hey, that's not the worst problem to have. Sounds like you got your plate full with commissions and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a pretty good problem to have, thankfully. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm very, very grateful for all the people who have like supported me in the past, who have trusted me, trusted me to paint their visions, and they're happy with it, and they're very patient with waiting for me to craft their artworks, and in order for me to like take my time to make sure that I'm also happy with the piece that I'm working on, because it also means a lot, means a lot to me. I treat every single one of my projects as if it's my own personal project and not work, because I just love storytelling. I just love making art.
Well, it certainly comes through in the work. It's like just about every spot that you look, it just seems like there's endless detail. Like in this
Thank you
piece, like
so much.
in the top right, I'll notice that yeah, like there's a head, but then if you look closer, there's an actual like different texture to it compared to everything else around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, this is like these are characters from Transformers, and they're called the Combaticons. So they're like a group of robots that can join into like the into a much bigger robot, and that's like the guy at the back, and like the
Mm-hmm.
smaller guys in the front are like all the members. And I really like the Transformers franchise, because especially in the comics, their characters are like so much more fleshed out than what it is in the movies. It's a really interesting read. It's not like just a bunch of giant robots punching each other like a lot of people think. Like a lot of Transformer stories is actually like political themed, which is really interesting to me. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
like this piece actually took me so long. Oh my god! And it's also partly because I'm still learning as an artist, and it's actually like an art skill, not to put in too much details into things that don't matter. Because if there's like too much details everywhere, it's just gonna like make the audience confused, I feel like. And I do need to work on that, because I feel like I put details way too much everywhere. But although some people do like it as well, so that's interesting.
Yeah, there's something to be said about about letting the audience's eyes make up the details as they go along, because
Mm-hmm.
it, for one, it saves you time because you could just like be looking at this plate of armor and being like, okay, wait, do I add the scratches here or maybe there, maybe a little bolt, maybe something here? But if you just like, you know, do a little bit of shading correctly, it'll essentially come out in
Yeah.
the same result, and you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about all that in the end.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm still learning. I'm still learning about stuff like that.
Yeah, or like this like stack of money, like, oh, do I really need to like make it so that each individual bill has a line going across it, or can I just like
Exactly.
add some kind of shades here, and oh, okay, then there you go. It makes the image complete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or is there like a more effective way of going around it? Maybe there's like a smarter way of rendering it so that it doesn't need to be that detailed and like it's a lot more time savings. There's a lot to be learned still.
Yeah, because even if I look at like the shockwaves here, like they're not all like the similar in color. Like you have the whites here, but on the edges it's a little bit more purple, and it fades into itself. And so when you say that this piece
Mm-hmm.
took you a while, I believe it. I certainly believe it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, like one part of art class that I was really interested in is definitely color theory, about because back then when I was still studying art fundamentals, I was like always curious about how all these, professional artists, they make like colors that are not supposed to work together. So, I was like really studying into how they were doing it. And eventually I did like find my own way of going around it. So, yeah, it was pretty cool learning about all those stuffs.
Yeah, not something that I would ever really consider that like would go into a piece. Like any piece of art that I made, I'm just like, oh, what color would go nice here? Okay, I'll just add that one. Or what color would go nice here? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I don't look at like a color wheel and try to like think, okay, what if I add this kind of shade and that kind of shade? But there is a lot of thought that actually goes into it for people that do know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
Right on. So we're at the 2 hour mark there. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we head off here?
I think everything's good. I was actually about to head off as well because like my phone is literally at 5%. But it has been a great interview and like I really enjoyed sharing thoughts with you, listening to your experiences and takes as well, and the sharing of other artists' works that now I have like catalog for me to review later because they make really awesome art. So it's been a really insightful interview and I'm very very grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to hear it, and I appreciate you making the time to come along and talk about your process here. Because like I said a couple times now, for a lot of artists, they're very introspective, so getting them to open up like this is very difficult. So I do appreciate you doing that. Now, in terms of your socials, are you just mostly on X or?
I am mostly on X, but recently I've also like being trying to be more active on my Instagram, which is also Frozensoba. I think it's Frozensoba 00 actually, because just Frozensoba is already taken. And I feel like, I'm more casual over there in the sense that sometimes I do share my gouache and sketchbook sketches in my stories there. Things that I can't like make into a proper post. I will sometimes share my sketches in the stories. So if any of the listeners are interested in seeing my sketchbook paintings, go check my Instagram out. I will be extremely extremely grateful.
Perfect. Yeah, please do, guys. And if you want to check her out, she also does have prints being sold on InPrint. If I could just say one thing, I think that your prints should at least double in price, and you would still be able to sell the same amount. Because
Thank you so much.
if artists are good at anything besides creating, it's undervaluing their work. And I have another person I interviewed who had similar prices to yours, and I would highly
I
encourage
see.
you to reconsider. those price lines, because I think they are worth much more than you let on them to be.
Noted, noted. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so much.
no, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for everyone for joining us. Like I said earlier, you can find all her stuff at Frozensoba, Frozensoba. Not sure when we're doing this interview, but check out our socials. We'll have everything there. This episode should be up probably by today, so I'll link it to you as soon as everything is done.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so
Perfect.
much, Mark, for having me again and for creating this space for artists to share their thoughts. And I wish you a wonderful day ahead of you.
And you as well. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to have artists come on, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we'll see you guys later.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.